Hello everyone, Tiffany Lane here from KSNV in Las Vegas, and we're about to have a roundtable discussion with teachers from all across the Vegas Valley on issues important to them as we head back into the school year starting on August 7th. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. I know that you are all very passionate educators in our Clark County School District, and you have a lot of things that you want to talk about today. So I wanted to go ahead and get started. I know you're from all different parts, so there are different issues important to you. Raise of hands, how many of you are excited to go back into the school year? All of you, great to hear that. Why don't we talk, we'll start over here with Shelly. Why don't you talk about the things that are important to you going into this school year?
Hi. Some of the things that are important to me, just making sure that I have everything that I need for my students and that they have a warm, safe, welcoming environment to be in, that they know that they're there to learn, that they're cared for, having that support from my administration, whether it's my school site admin or going up through the region into the district level, just making sure we have the support we need and the autonomy to do what needs to be done to help our kids so they can be successful and have a great year.
When you talk about autonomy, what do you mean by that, and what type of support do teachers need to be able to be successful in the classroom for themselves and their students?
To be able to teach what the kids need to know and not focusing just on testing, but to make sure that they're learning the skills that they need in order to be successful and not having upper management always there. We need to have this done. We need to have this done, but making sure that we can do the things that we were hired to do to take care of those kids and provide them the best education possible. Without having to worry that we have this test coming up, there's this test coming up, we have to look at all this data. When we do that, we're not really focusing on the reason why we're there, which is to educate these kids and get them ready for college and get them ready for their careers.
Just so I can see a show of hands, how many of you actually feel supported in your classrooms? Okay, good. I'd love to hear that. So why don't we talk about, many of you talk to me about safety and safety in our schools. Do you as teachers feel safe in your classrooms and on our campuses? Who would like to start? I know, Kristen, we've talked about this issue, so if you want to give your viewpoint on this.
Yeah, I will gladly give my viewpoints. So pretty much when it comes to safety, I've had some struggles in the last couple of years. Definitely had some students that were a little bit challenging than most. But with that being said, I am really happy to say that our school has taken the initiative to hire a behavior strategist, which is just absolutely incredible. Actually, our union president is very good friends with the woman that is coming and speaks highly of her and her ability to, rehab these kids. And that's what we're really looking for. We're looking at ways of how do we support these kids? How do we help these kiddos to get them back in the classroom, functioning, learning? And so it's going to be a very big focus at our school this year. And I'm really happy about that. And we do have supportive administration. And so that's another really big deal that I am seeing at least at my site.
Vicki, why don't you talk about your side from the safety standpoint as a teacher as well?
Okay, I work on the east side of Las Vegas, and in the last year, behaviors, and we are elementary, and behaviors really escalated a lot. In the last year, I was actually surprised. But having a supportive administrator who listens when you come to them with a concern, and we also have a staff member who helps us with behaviors, having a team approach when students are struggling with behavior, because the reality is there's always a reason behind why kids are acting out. It's not just acting out to disrupt your teaching. They're acting out for reasons often you're not even aware of, something that's happening to them at home or has that happened elsewhere. So having a team approach where all of us want the student to be successful and not to disrupt things at school or hurt anybody else I think it's really key. is working together to help the students, because the reality is we want our students to be successful and we want their experience at school to be positive. So I feel safe at my school because I know that when I go to my administrator about an issue, someone's going to listen and do something.
And Shelley, I see you nodding your head in agreement. So why don't you add to this?
I teach in Old Henderson at an elementary school. Like Vicki and Kristen, my school is very safe. I have a supportive administrator and an assistant principal that if there's a problem, if a child's doing something in class that they shouldn't, and we've done all we can, then they remove the child and talk to them about proper behavior. And if it's something that's really bad, then they take them out of school for a couple of days. So they're not really falling into that trap where we just, try to make everything focus on positive. They're realizing there's consequences to their behaviors, and it makes it a safe place to be because we know that we have that support, that if the kids are doing something that shouldn't be happening at school, the counselor will talk to them, the assistant principal will talk to them. Someone is there to try to get to the root of it and make sure the teachers can do what needs to be done.
Now, speaking of support, I know many of you have spoken about, obviously, there's staffing shortages, including when it comes to educators. Jennifer, this is something that you were talking about at, it looks like your old school, where you felt that you had to take on too many duties and it causes a burnout. Why don't you talk about your personal experience and how that really impacts you, but then also how you're able to teach your students?
Yeah, Tiffany, this was an experience I'd never had before. I was in high school. And as we saw across the board, behaviors increased. We were also overcrowded and understaffed, of course, like everywhere else. But I ended up being asked to teach 2 full programs at the same time and sell both preps, and and we couldn't find, I don't know what happened, but I was supposed to get a full-time instructional aide. That never happened. I had between 40 and 55 kids in each class every period of the day. And I ended up getting carted off by an ambulance in February and didn't go back. And so I'm going back down to elementary this time, but I don't think my admin could have done anything else, honestly. And I don't think I could have done anything differently than I did. I did everything I could to pull in parents, to pull in other teachers to help, to pull in alumni. I did everything that I could possibly think of to do to alleviate the burden. And my team was wonderful. They were loaning me their aides to help me put grades in, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I'm here for. And I know the kids were not getting as much out of it as they needed to. And I didn't want to leave them mid-year, but I also we always want to model for our kids what we want them to do, right? So these are high school kids, a lot of them about to graduate, go off to college. All behavior is communication, and they were communicating to us that they don't feel safe, that they don't think we can keep them safe. So why should they listen to us? It was tough, but I also wanted to show them that sometimes you have to put yourself first and say, I'm done right now. My body can't do it anymore. My mind can't do it anymore. Need a break and to step away. And it was heartbreaking. It really was desperately heartbreaking. I'm really looking forward to my new school and back in elementary, and hoping that that this year will be better. I worry at the upper levels, especially, that just don't have enough bodies to make these kids feel like they're an environment that they can learn in. Right now, they're still in survival mode from the pandemic, especially high schoolers. We spent a couple of years telling them, you're able to do this on your own. You can sit there on Zoom by yourself all day while I go to work. You can take care of your younger siblings while I take care of this other thing here. And then all of a sudden switch around and say, oh, now you have to follow all the rules again. You're not really responsible enough to be on your own. And that's a mixed message.
And Jennifer, we're glad you're doing better now, and hopefully things do improve, as you mentioned. How many, show of hands, how many of you feel burned out as teachers? Okay, so it looks like all of you. Cedric, why don't you introduce yourself and share how that burnout is impacting you, and one step you think can be taken to help alleviate that.
Cedric McMillan. I'm currently a chief on the school on the east side. I think the burnout comes with, every day just dealing with different situations. Not every day is the same to me. And just knowing that a lot of times as teachers, as educators, we take things home, and people don't understand that. We don't just go to school and work a couple of hours with the kids and then just go home and we wash that away. It just easily escapes our mind. We have to constantly plan. We have to constantly think about the children. If I know one of my children are struggling, especially for me, a special education teacher, I'm researching like what'll work, because the way I was taught or the way I've been working with that child isn't working, and I need them to be able to communicate their wants and needs. I'm going to sit down and look at videos on YouTube or read and research. And that takes time out of my schedule, out of time with my family, out of time with me doing the things that I like to do. And that's where I think a lot of time the burnout comes. I know I hear some people say, well, you got to leave it at school. No, it's not. That doesn't happen. If you want to be a quality educator, you do not leave it at school. It comes home with you. It's when you're laying in the bed, just trying to go to sleep, your eyes start fluttering. Oh, I got an idea. Let me go write this down. That's what education is, and that a lot of times leads to burnout, because we take the plight of the world on us as much as educators feel. We do that, and that's, for me, that's where the burnout comes. And I just want to speak one last thing about school safety. I think for me, school safety is also dealing with like the community, like. We see the kids I know I had one student talk about mass shootings. Like, that's scary to try to tell a child, like, it's not going to happen here. We're going to make sure our best way to make sure that you're safe at all times and feel comfortable at school, when in the back of my mind, I don't feel safe.
Is anything being done to address it? Is there anything that you would like to see done? Is nothing being done? Is not enough being done? I'd like to hear. We can go in order if you all have ideas. Vicki, I see your hand raised. Why don't you go ahead and start this off?
The reality is that the educators' plates are too full. There's too many things expected. We make thousands of decisions in a day. And then there's so many tasks. We have to make everybody happy. We have to follow all the directives of our administrator. The district has things that we're supposed to be doing. The state gives us all the standards that we have to do. There's so many expectations. And then we have individual things from parents that there's special things they want done for their child. And we, of course, want everyone to be happy, everyone that we're working with. So the plates are too high. And what we need to do is every administrator in CCSD needs to be given reasonable expectations to the educators as far as tasks. An example is educators have 21 videos that we have to watch as part of our annual thing. And when I first came here, I don't remember how many there were, but it was less than, I think around 10 maybe. And now it's up to 21 videos that we have to watch. Basically, if we can't get it done during our prep time, we're doing it on our own time, and we're not getting paid for any of that. So there's a lot of tasks and not enough time. And so that takes away from our time at home with our families and our personal time. And that burns you out so that you just don't have anything left. And that's what we need to stop doing to educators. We can't do that anymore.
And just to make you guys aware, if you do the little arm raising on the bottom, I can't see it, but if you actually put your arm up, I can. So if we can continue that way, that works perfectly. Is this something everyone wants to talk about? Or only, if everyone wants to talk about it, we can just, Kristen, you can go next. I see your arm raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo off that. I mean, also, I think we really need to consider too, when we're talking about teacher burnout, not only do we have a million things on our plate, and not only are we making like thousands of decisions in a day, But we're also looking at a couple other things and a couple other factors and variables that we really can't control at this time. And we need to look forward. We need to look to the district for guidance on this and, partnership as well. So when we're talking about burnout, a couple things that comes to my mind, at least as an educator, is I currently work like 4 different positions in the district. So not only am I a kindergarten teacher, but I also wear a bunch of other hats. And don't get me wrong, I like to do these things, but there's also the monetary part of those things. In order for us as educators to be able to live here and teach in our community, we have to work multiple jobs. And that's difficult. And so that is why when we talk about, educators receiving, pay that's going to support them to be able to live in this community, that's why it's so important. And not only that, but I mean, at least for me, I love teaching in the community that I live in. I teach about 10 minutes from my home right now. And those people, they are my family. Those are my extended family. And the reality is, and I know I'm not the only educator that's probably even on this panel that's talked about this, if I cannot feel supported, and that's financially, academically, all those things, I can't continue to live in Las Vegas. And this has been my home for the last 10 years. But it's time to face the music and really understand that, and I know the community's behind us on this, is we really need to be in a place where we can be here for our students. And the way that we do that is we have to be able to live here and afford to live here. And so that's why it's really important for us to really, have a contract.
Who else would like to? Shelley, please.
I know one thing you and I talked about when we spoke last week, this summer, I've spent most of my summer going to new curriculum trainings because there's 4 new programs being thrown at us that we have to implement when we go back to school in a week and a half. And we've had to give up our summer for these trainings. So we don't even get to have that downtime that we're supposed to be resting during the summer and getting ready because we're constantly going to training. And I had mentioned too, when we're doing Summer Accelerate, we get to have more fun with the kids. And that's my time to decompress. Those 14 days I had with my kids in Summer Accelerate, we learned more and had more fun during that time. And the kids wanted to be there. That was the time when I felt that I didn't have that burnout. I wasn't stressed every day. It was fun. And to me, that's the way that school should be, is somewhere where the kids want to be and we have fun because we don't have that constant pressure of all of this stuff that has to be done. Let's have some fun while we're at school. Let's still learn, but let's take some of that heavy burden out so that we all want to be there and enjoy each other's company.
And Jennifer, you were nodding your head as if you agree as well. Why don't you talk about this?
Yes, absolutely, Tiffany. I totally agree with everything that Vicki and Christian and Shelley have said. It's so hard trying to check every box, and the new curriculums come like constantly. As soon as we have learned one, we switch to something else. I think this will be like the 4th reading curriculum I've had to learn in 7 years, and it's hard to get a good grip on how something like that works until you've done it for a good 3 years at least. And we're not being given the chance to really do what we do well because there's so many other things that we have to do to check boxes for a bunch of other people. There's a difference between a struggle and a burnout. I don't mind struggling as long as I'm struggling with people that are working with me and can hear me and I can hear them, and we are playing to each other's strengths and holding each other up where we're not so great. It's when I'm hitting against brick walls of, well, we just got to do that, or you just suck it up, or don't worry about this thing, you have to do that thing. That just takes a lot of energy all by itself, and it's hard to recoup any of that when there are brick walls in the way.
And Angela, I don't know if you want to try to chime in on this one because I think you're the only one we haven't heard about the burnout from. Do you also feel the burnout?
Yeah, Definitely. I've taught for 20 years. My last 6 have been here in Clark County School District. This is probably the worst school district I've taught for. There's so many things that go on here that I think I'm just shocked by. So I guess, yeah, I feel the burnout here more than I have before. When I came here, I was teaching in a self-contained autism unit. And for 4 years, well, for 5 years, I guess. No, for 4 years. During that time, I went to the emergency room twice from situations in the autism unit because we were not properly staffed. So I think, when you're being injured at work and you're not valued and it's not important that your welfare is, that you're okay, then you get that burnout. And so then I went to gen ed, and I honestly could not believe everything that they were trying to have, all these gen ed teachers, because I taught gen ed before here, and I did not have to do all of the craziness that they're asking. Like, I was teaching first grade, and I think that we, at the beginning of the year, between August and like September 1st, we had to give these first graders 7 different exams, or like 7 different progress monitoring kind of different things. It's just crazy. It's like, why do you need 7 different tools to tell you the same thing? And, anytime you say, well, why are you using 7 of these? You get the question, oh, well, this is what the school district wants, but this is what we want. This is what the RTI team wants. This is what the SPED wants. I'm like, are you guys crazy? Because you're wasting a lot of time by everybody not using the same tool. And so halfway through last year, there was a resource position that opened up at my school. So I just got out of gen ed and I went to resource. And so I felt honestly less burnout there. But it's just, yeah, people are being asked to do too much. And I have to say, fortunately for me, I came from a school district where I was higher paid, so they had to meet my salary when I was hired here. But I have not had a raise in the last 6 years, which if I was in any other school district somewhere else, I would have had a raise every year. And it's because, I try to play their CU game, but oh my gosh, I submit something and I haven't dotted this or I haven't, I don't know. So I had the wrong signature. I had the wrong form. I had the wrong person. I marked out something I wasn't supposed to mark out. It's a joke. I don't know how anybody gets their CUs unless they just do that as their job instead of teaching, which pretty much is what you have to do if you want to get a raise. And it's like, I should not have to work outside my job to get a raise. That just should be part of your job. Every year you should get something. It was every other district I worked in, and they were smaller districts. I think that the way that the teachers compensated here is crazy. And it's, honestly, it's really sad to say that I don't have anything positive to say about Clark County School District. The only reason that I'm still here is like for personal reasons that keep me in this town that I'm in. But once those things are taken care of, I won't be staying with Clark County School District. There's not any reason to.
And one thing I want to ask is, obviously, one of the things that everyone's mentioned is obviously heavy workload. There's short staffing. I did some research a few weeks ago and saw, and there are staffing shortages across the board. However, there are certain areas that have more vacancies, and we see a lot of it in North Las Vegas and East Las Vegas. I'd like to hear all of your perspective, or whoever is willing. How is the process of getting to a school, and what do you think the reasons are that some of these schools do have more vacancies as opposed to others? And I believe Camila is on here, and I know we talked about this before, but I would love to hear her perspective as well if she's on here. Yes, Camila, why don't you go ahead and start on this, please?
Yes, thank you so much for having this conversation, Tiffany. And I do just want to say that I am a licensed special education teacher, but at this time, I choose to, support through substitute teaching. So from my point of view, and also holding an advocate hat as well as an educator and a parent within the district, I do believe that some of the reasons that we're seeing just wide range of vacancies in different parts of the area are because that some schools may have more challenges. Some schools in North Las Vegas may have more challenges and a lack of resources rather than schools that are in more suburban areas. And oftentimes our schools that have more challenges, all of the issues that our teachers have brought up today are exactly right. If there's a lack of resources, you're feeling the burnout, then teachers have the ability to choose where they would prefer to teach and find schools that could possibly be a better fit, where they receive more administrative support, which unfortunately will leave the schools with more challenges, where there's more students in poverty, really fending for themselves. And there are also other factors that increase the reason why teachers leave. We know that teacher pay has always been an issue. When I first worked in the Clark County School District until now, what we're seeing, teachers are not paid what they should be paid for the work that they do. And we just heard that you have your bachelor's degree, your master's degree, you're taking CU courses and other types of courses and professional development that don't initially help to increase your pay. So, and these issues are very important. And these are the things that teachers think about as they're choosing what schools they would like to teach at.
Cedric, why don't I ask you to start off, do you feel like there are any resources missing at your school, or do you feel like you're pretty well resourced?
Sorry about that. I was trying to the mic. I think at my school, as far as resources, things were going along. What I found was, because I am in a school on the east side, and we were pretty much staffed, but then they added 2 more special ed programs where we had no aides, no staff, which made it very hard for me as a CEF. 2, when it comes to the resources that we provided, I think my principal went above and beyond at the time, but there's other things that created, issues based on that, which is keep adding on different stuff, or the district will come out with one mandate and then the principal has an idea and then it just doesn't mesh well together. And that supplies that resource. But I want to talk a little bit about what Camilla was talking about as far as those schools that we find out that not only are they underserved, but they're underperformed. And a lot of people, let's be honest, as teachers, we want to see growth in our students. And if they don't show growth, we feel like a failure. And there are easier ways to make waves by going to a school where it's much easier. The kids are sitting there and learning. I think, I feel like the best solution for me is, a lot of the times, is we have to have schools where people have buy-in. And it's hard to have a buy-in to a school where you are mandated to do this program because one, so it might be a Title I school where you have to follow the Title I guidelines, then the district guidelines. And then you have some behaviors that might be, you won't get at a particular area. And then you also have the idea that some people come in there and don't want to adapt to what the students are and their needs of how they learn. So which makes it difficult. And what I saw this year with my first year really being out the classroom, by trade, I'm a kids program teacher, preschool teacher of children with autism. So I'm in a bubble, like literally. My bubble is autism and preschool. I do preschool standards. I'm singing all day, Baby Shark. That's my jam. But going into other classrooms, going into the resource room, it's just the differences and the needs that a lot of these students have, that takes the time away. We had a counselor, we had other groups come in to deal with students, and it was so many kids. That's a lot on one adult to have to deal with. And that's why people are leaving. And they're not only leaving to go to new schools, they're leaving the profession. I have witnessed people say, I've witnessed a long-term say, I'm done. No more education for me. I'm gonna find something else. And that's what we have to try to figure out. What can we do to keep teachers in the classroom and understand that they're still supported? Because I think for the most part, principals want to support and try to support, but they're also being spread thin too. They got this to deal with. They got the budget. They got their area supervisors telling them what to do. They got visitors coming into the school. They got parents. And if you know you're dealing with a school that most of the time where it's economically different, those parents come in a little bit different than what you might come with a parent who's a part of the PTA that wants to support in a certain way. So it's a lot of variables in my mind.
Kristen.
Oops.
I just wanted to piggyback off of what Cedric was saying, and something that's really important that he brought up was the retention piece. So like, here's my perspective of being very involved in our district is I just came for the employee onboarding event, the new teacher kickoff. Today, I'm in the meeting room, and outside was where we were in the ballroom at the Resorts World. We serviced 1,200 new educators here in the school district, right? And that's like, wow, you think about like, whoa, that's 1,200. There was a lot of people here today, but that does not take into an account how many left the profession at the end of the school year? How many are going to leave a couple months into the school year? Because what we're seeing is that we hire and then we bleed out. We hire, we bleed out. And it is just all these things that are just filled in these schools, such as class sizes. I mean, we're talking 4th and 5th grade class sizes at my school that had almost 40 kids. That's crazy. That you can't teach with 40 kids. You're crowd control at that point. We're also talking about, again, I'm going to go back to the funding, the pay. We're talking about, behaviors that maybe weren't necessarily dealt with in the proper way. Like, I can't tell you how many times I have heard from educators that have reached out to me personally to say, what do I do? Because I have a child who is just having extreme behaviors, and they've come back to my class again with a juice and a bag of goldfish crackers. That's wrong. Like, all of these things will burn you out quicker than you can blink. And all of these things should be things that our district leadership should be thinking about, going, you know what? Wow, we did a really good job, hiring and recruiting, but how are we retaining them? How are we doing that? And that is the secret. It has to start with district leadership to think about these things, because if not, we are going to be in this vicious cycle forever. And I still have 15, 20 more years of teaching left in me, but am I going to make it? I can tell you right now that I had 5 people that I dealt with last year that I can remember from employee onboarding new teacher kickoff. They've already left. They're working on the strip right now because they said, I couldn't do it. It was too much for my mental health. And that is scary. That's not okay. Those are brand new teachers.
One thing I haven't really heard mentioned, I've worked in East Las Vegas and I worked in North Las Vegas. So both of the 2 areas that you're talking about. And when I came here 10 years ago and I worked in North Las Vegas, I was shocked at the trauma I was seeing in these students. Cedric, you and I worked at the same school when I first came here. I was in 1st grade when I started, and I had students who had gone through unimaginable things at home, things that an adult would struggle surviving and coming out of the other side. And there's no support for them. At the school I'm at now, my school's been trying to get a social worker for years. We have 1 counselor for over 700 students. 1 counselor can't help all of them. It's just not possible. So teachers also have secondary trauma through our students. People don't understand that when our students go through things and they bring them into the classroom, and I have to find out what they've experienced and then watch it in their face every day, look into their eyes and see the tears. They come in the morning and they tell you what just happened at home. It's a lot. And these schools, there's a lot of this happening. And the teachers, we're not social workers, we're not counselors, we're not trained to help our students with trauma. Some of us go on our own and get, some training, but we're not experts in it. So we absorb it. And teachers can't even get mental health support ourselves. There's not enough providers in Las Vegas for us to go to therapy for it. Like you call and they say it's going to be months down the road before you can get your first appointment. So there's a lot of other things related to trauma, and COVID made trauma worse for the students. Our students went through even more after COVID. And I think that's some of what we're seeing in these schools.
Jennifer, you raised your hand on this as well, and Shelley will get to you right afterwards.
Vicki, I hear everything you are saying. The stories we have are unbelievable. I don't know how, I know I've written at least 5 suicide referrals for 5th graders in my career, and that's crazy. But it's also not surprising to any of the teachers here. The other thing that is a big factor is the low number of subs available for when we really need a break. We really need to take a day off. Our kids are throwing up, or we're throwing up, or just, I can't get my butt up out of this house another day right now. But we have to, because there aren't enough subs. And I know personally at least 6 or 7 people who have tried to become subs in our district, and the district makes it very difficult to get a sub license and to get into the classroom, and which you would think would be something you'd want to do, if you've got people who are qualified, who are willing, who are ready, who have all of their paperwork together, and they have a clean background check. Like it shouldn't take months and months, and yet it does. I had people waiting for 8 months trying to get all their paperwork through. And that makes things difficult, because in order to try and attract a sub to us, we have to go on the Facebook group and say, hey, we're going to give you gift cards. We're going to give you candy. We're going to, we'll buy you a drink at some point. Like we have to court our own subs, or we have to rely on the rest of our team to take on our burden. And we know what that's like for us. So we never want to do it for our teams. So it's almost like being held hostage sometimes to the needs of the school. And not only are we being expected to ignore our own needs, but we're being rewarded for ignoring our own needs, saying, oh, you get a prize for being, going above and beyond for your students. You ignored your needs for this many hours this year. Yay, you. That seems backwards, and it feels backwards, and it definitely contributes to the burnout.
And Shelley, I know you wanted to comment on this topic.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody has said, but there's the elephant in the room that I told my husband I was going to mention. There was an article in the news just a couple of weeks ago that the teachers had been asking for help, and we're going to give you help, and another layer of management was hired. How is that going to help me in my classroom? By hiring 8 more administrators. I've never worked in a school district that is so upper management heavy, that has no contact within the classroom affecting student achievement. But district administration feels that by hiring more upper administration, that's lessening my burden in the classroom. And I don't see that correlation. I would rather have more resources in my classroom. As Kristen mentioned, giving us the raises that we're asking for. Something like that would be a better way to lessen my burden in the classroom than hiring more administrators that are going to put more work on my boss and therefore more work on me. So that's a big concern that I have right now.
One of the, I think one of the parts of the discussion that many of you just brought up is mental health. And I want to ask, it seems like some of you are saying there aren't enough resources for that. Do you believe that there is more that your schools, that the district could do to help with mental health, or is it kind of you don't even have time to address that right now? Who raise of hands? Who? Cedric.
I've been teaching this week because my 22nd year of teaching, and I think more so now than ever, I think a job as an educator is that we do everything. We do counseling, we do therapy in the classroom while we still have other kids trying to learn. I've set IPs where I've been a marriage counselor. Literally. Vicky will tell you. It's like, it's honestly true. Like, we have taken on so much burden, everything. But the biggest thing I think the reason is because a lot of things that when I first started teaching, the trauma is totally different now that kids are experiencing that I don't think that we were prepared for. We had COVID-19, we were secluded. We had a lot of kids that we surprisingly don't talk about, that did not have siblings, but parents still had to work. So they were sometimes at home by themselves, no matter what their age, or they were taking care, like we talked about earlier, taking care of their siblings. They didn't develop social skills for those 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. Then we bring them back to school. We're putting demands on them. And also, we have things that happen in the homes that many of us don't even know what happened between parents that these kids are witness to, more so now because they were at home for those times. So they're dealing with that. Another thing is social media. They're seeing things on social media I would never have seen as a kid growing up. They're seeing violence. Well, she was 17 at the time, my oldest daughter. They were sending videos of fights to each other, and then they would judge them. They were giving them a rating. Like, that's unheard of. We fought in school, of course, but we didn't have videos of it, and we're not rating them, and we're not sending them out to everybody in the high school. Like, or they look at things, just violence, the video games. And I grew up in the video game age where we played violent video games, but now it's just the kids are now talking while they're playing video games with each other. So it's a consortium of whole different things that it's just like, wow. And then they have no one to really talk to. And that's key, because I'm learning myself that I have to go to counseling to talk to somebody to feel better, to get a better understanding of who myself is. I've been through a lot, and we all go through trauma, and it's not a lot out there where the kids can discuss certain things. That's just my 2 cents.
And Angela, I saw your hand was raised. Talk about this topic for you, and then also how that impacts your mental health, impacts how you're able to educate your students.
Okay, so I just feel like our broken education system is a reflection of our broken society. Just as an example, I was unfortunate enough to I went to a Barbie movie with a friend of mine. Okay, it's rated PG-13, all right? I saw parents bringing their 6 and 7-year-old kids to the Barbie movie. That's not, people that are not even in education rated that for 13-year-olds, which I still wouldn't have wanted my 13-year-olds to hear some of the things that they said, even though I know they hear those things all the time. But why are parents bringing their 6 and 7-year-old little girls to this movie? And that's just it's society's issue, and then all of a sudden it becomes education's issue. I feel like educators are being required to fulfill all of the jobs that parents aren't fulfilling. And that's where it takes a mental toll on us. It's like, I'm not only an educator, but I raise my own children. now I need to educate and raise your children while I'm educating and raising my children. And, you know, it is a lot of mental stress. I mean, I live in Mesquite, so it's a lot different as far as like resources. We don't have like any options really here as far as like psychologists or counselors or things like that to get, you know, those kind of resources for. We have a school counselor, and she comes in and does like lessons in the classroom. Like I think she gets to each classroom once a month for the kids. But even, I don't know, there's just always so much red tape. I have friends that are grief counselors, and they have volunteered to come into the schools and have like counseling sessions with the kids. And there's just so much red tape for these people, even volunteers, to come into the school and help our kids. It's just ridiculous. Even when the help is there, it's impossible to get because of the red tape from the school district. I just think it's crazy. So yeah, I just think mental health is huge, and for the kids too. I mean, it's just for us all.
Thank you. And Kristen, I see your hand is raised as well.
I just wanted to jump in on this because this is something that has actually been near and dear to my heart for the last couple of years since we've come back from COVID. Two things that I see. One, absolutely, well, not even just two things. The overall mental health, I guess, what you call it, infrastructure in Nevada is just not it. I mean, that, to put it very bluntly. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that we do not have enough social workers or any type of mental health people that can take on the burden of what we are seeing in our schools. So let me give you an example, a couple things. I've actually had to use it personally for my son. And I was not able to get in to have him see anybody. It was months. And it was an emergency. He was 7 years old at the time. And my mother had just passed away unexpectedly. And he was really struggling with that, like a lot, to the point where he wasn't able to go to school because of his anxiety. The other piece of that is having students within my class. I had a student that was struggling so bad with wanting to harm himself as well as harm the other students, where he had tried multiple times. When we finally were able to get him referrals to the places that he needed to go, again, it was months. And we're talking like even the first couple appointments, it took so long for him to get in there. And what these kids are experiencing is not just like, hey, we need to talk to somebody and that'll fix everything. Like, these kids need like deep therapy that's going to like help them come out on the other side. Because from at least what I'm seeing in just my school alone, I am very concerned for our future. And I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel like I'm really excited to watch these kids grow up. I'm excited to watch them do their next big thing. But I don't know if that'll be the case, because a lot of them are dealing with so much. So until we have the funding here in the state of Nevada that's going to go to wraparound services for these students and their families, I'm super concerned. And that's all I have to say about that.
Camila, are you there? Would you like to comment on this? I know we talk about mental health a lot.
I'm very critical of how the district has chosen, our district leadership has chosen to spend some of the phenomenal amounts of money that we have received here in this state. For example, I know I mentioned this before and I'm going to continue to mention it, but the paper software the paper program that was purchased, $55-something million, to support an outside company to provide tutoring for students, was probably one of the worst decisions that any of our leadership could have made. That $55 million plus or minus dollars could have been used directly to support students with behavior, to support the mental and behavioral health of our students, and also to support the teachers and the staff who are constantly in the classrooms doing this work every day. So it's situations like that and funding decisions like that that really make me as an educator, as a licensed professional and a substitute teacher think, does our leadership really have the best interest of our students and the people who genuinely serve our students every single day?
Jennifer.
Yeah, and the piggybacking on to all of that, we don't have insurance that is going to make this any easier. There are very, very few mental health professionals here in Nevada who will accept our insurance, and even fewer now than there used to be, since our insurance had a little problem a while back and sort of stopped paying anybody. So now we're fighting against, well, this is all we have, but yeah, they've got a really bad rap and they don't cover much. And even if they did, very few people will accept it because they can't trust it. So we end up sort of falling through the cracks there, even if we can find a therapist, or even if we can get in to see somebody, we have to pay out of pocket or pray that the insurance is going to cover us.
Vicki, I saw when we were discussing just how the district was using its money, I saw you were kind of nodding your head. Do you think that schools or the district as a whole spend their money wisely when it comes to the needs of our schools?
No, and Camila gave the example of paper, and that's a good example. Schools were required to have students log in to paper, a certain number of times per month for a certain amount of time. And that's coming directly out of our instructional time. So no, and that resource, especially for elementary, was not useful for elementary students at all. And often things are purchased and I'm at the board meetings asking them, why are we buying this? Because it doesn't make sense. There's so many things we need. The teachers have so many needs. The students have so many needs. The schools have needs. And often that's not what they're purchasing. And especially the ESSER money. The ESSER money, we had so much ESSER money that could have been spent in so many positive ways. But it seemed like we spent most of it on Chromebooks, which, yes, we needed those during distance teaching, but there's other things that we need too. We're not doing distance teaching anymore. We're in our classrooms and there's things we need. So when educators have to pay out of pocket to get things that we need to use programs we're required to use, that's really frustrating. And when I was a regular classroom teacher, because I'm just a reading teacher now, but when I was a regular classroom teacher, I would run out of paper and I'm having to go buy boxes of paper for my classroom. Run out of pencils, I'd have to go buy pencils because we can't count on our families to always provide these things for us. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you have parents who are very generous, and then sometimes you have years when they're just not able to help you. So no, I don't think the money's used wisely all the time. And when we do get a program that's really helpful, or they purchase something that's really helpful, it's kind of a nice surprise because often that's not what we're seeing.
And I hear that many of you spend a lot of money out of pocket. Sometimes I hear from teachers that it's upwards of $1,000, $1,500. Sometimes they create the crowdfunding. I don't know what it's called for teachers. I'm blanking right now. How many of you often have to pay out of pocket or go to these crowdfunding type sources to be able to get what you need in the classroom? Okay, so a majority of you. Shelley, why don't you talk about just some of the things that you have to pay for out of pocket to be able to properly teach your students?
Like Vicki, we get a case of paper every semester, but that's not enough. So I'm constantly buying paper, dry erase markers, glue sticks, notebooks, because the kids, they'll bring in, we ask for a certain kind and they bring in different ones. So I'm constantly buying comp notebooks. I don't like to use the traditional seating in my classroom. So I've used donors' choose for flexible seating. We have a science program that's not the greatest. So in my school, we buy our own science supplies to bring in to do our science so the kids can actually do hands-on science instruction. We get supplemental materials, manipulatives for math. We bring those in so that the kids that are struggling with math, that they can learn how to do the math with their hands. All those kinds of things come out of our pocket because we don't always have the school funds for it.
Kristen?
So I just wanted to add to that. Yes, the amount of money that that I have spent in a school year, I won't even get into it because if my husband hears about it, he's going to be upset. So love you. No, but I will say Donors Choose is the crowdfunding, what you were talking about, Tiffany. And I have been very blessed with my Donors Choose account. And it's not that necessarily, I have had some parents that have been really good about funding projects, but a lot of the times I will actually look and seek out the match offers because I feel like you get more bang for your buck. Coming up on August 2nd, they're actually doing a 50% match, which is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So if any of the teachers out there do have a Donors Choose account, or they should create a Donors Choose account because there's a really good opportunity there. And I will say a lot of the times when you're dealing with the new school year, they call them, I believe, like preferred partners. Donors Choose has all these big businesses that will do like flash funding where all the projects on the Donors Choose page will get funded. And I'm not even kidding, Tiffany, at one time, I had almost 6 projects that were funded because Sonic, like the fast food restaurant, they came through and flash funded everything. I've also had just where random donors in Nevada, I don't even know who they are, they're anonymous donors, have come through and completely flash funded all of the projects that I've had, like 2 or 3 projects. And so the opportunity to use that crowdfunding is really helpful. Also, I mean, yes, it's more work for the teacher to put the project on there, but it's a really good opportunity. And I'm really forever grateful to have that opportunity, that there is such things in place.
Now, I want to make sure that we're hitting all the topics important to all of you. Is there anything so far that we've discussed that any of you, or haven't discussed, excuse me, that any of you would like to talk about right now? Angela?
And I think this probably just applies to me. I don't know if everybody else teaches in Las Vegas, but and I think we probably don't deal with some of the things that you deal with in Las Vegas because we are Mesquite, we're a smaller town. But I also think that puts us in the situation of not having access to some of the things that you guys have access to in Las Vegas. For example, like working in autism, when we wanted to have a behavior interventionist come out, it would be like, they have to come from Las Vegas. And so they have the drive, and then they might be in our classroom for 15, 20 minutes. And then they give us this information from that. And it's not like there's just not any time for us to sit down and discuss what's happening with this student. They just come in there and do maybe a quick observation. I've had them show up at my lunchtime. I've had them show up on prep when the students aren't even in my class. And maybe this happens in Vegas too. I don't know. Maybe it's not the distance, but I just feel like we really are different from Vegas, and we really shouldn't be part of Clark County School District. I mean, I know that Nevada does it by county, but like what happens in Vegas doesn't always happen out here, and what happens out here doesn't happen in Vegas. You know, there is a lot of difference. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration by someone at some point, because Clark County is big, and, maybe it needs some separation. I worked in a school district. The town was about 60,000. And there was 2 different school districts in that town. And, that's just the way it was. They're not done by the county. And so maybe that's an issue that needs to be addressed. I don't know. But I just feel like because we are far away from the school district, there's things that are not considered when decisions are made.
Was there any other topic that anyone feels like we missed or that you wanted to bring up heading back into the school year? Let me see from, a show of hands. If you're not comfortable, it's fine, but how many of you have considered leaving the school district? Almost all of you, okay. What kept you here? Okay, Jennifer?
Hands down, the kids that are here. I've taught in one other place than Clark County School District, and the kids here they need us, and they're the most rewarding kids I've ever taught.
I think Kristen?
So I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. I came out here in 2009 to start my life with my, at the time, fiance, now husband. And I've created this wonderful life here in Southern Nevada. I mean, this is home for me now. And the reality is, I want this to continue to be my home. But if we don't have major overhaul of what's happening in CCSD, I'm not going to be able to continue to stay here. And that's really sad because my son, I have an 8-year-old, Tiffany, you know him. This is his home and he loves it here and he's got a lot of friends, and it would be devastating to take him out of here and to have to go into a district that we don't know anybody because his mom and dad can't afford to be here anymore. And so I don't want that to happen. And also, Jennifer, you're right. It is the kids. These kids that come through my school, a lot of them, I've taught their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles. And it's really sad to see or to think that maybe that might not be the reality one day, that I'm maybe not going to be able to be here.
Cedric, I know you had your hand raised as well.
My own children. My 2 oldest ones are out of Clark County High School, but my last one, she's 16. In 2 years, if she's gone and moves away to college like the other 2, one of my daughters is going to Nevada State. I don't know. I might consider leaving. I mean, just to try something different and see. I come from LAUSD, so Los Angeles. So I don't know, but that's just my personal opinion. It's my kids. It has nothing to do. I love teaching the children here. I love Las Vegas, but I don't know. I have to move on.
Vicki?
I considered leaving in 2016. At the time, I didn't leave because my husband does medical device manufacturing, and it's kind of a niche manufacturing. There's not a lot of jobs in that area. But the other thing is, it was around that time that I started my advocacy work in the district. And there's so many educators that feel like nobody hears them and nobody cares about them. And I feel like there's a need for people to stand up and speak up. And I do. And that's what's keeping me here right now. All of my 2 sons have both moved back to California. I'm from San Diego. But I stay here because someone needs to do the work. And I feel like if I'm doing the work, then other people might be brave enough to step up and join the work that we're doing. So that's why I'm here.
Well, if there's nothing else anyone else would like to add, I'm just looking to make sure I'm not missing any hands. I would like to say from News 3, we appreciate all of you and thank you all for your service to our community and for helping our students. They are the future, and so we appreciate everything you do. So thank you so much for your service to the Clark County School District, but also to our community. And thank you so much for participating in this discussion today. We wish you the best for the start of back to school, and I'm sure we'll be having many more conversations once school begins as well.